And the first life on Earth developed about 3.5 billion years ago. The next slide. Now, this is the time, this is 1 billion years after the development of Earth. This is when the first living cell formed. And this red line is the level of oxygen in our atmosphere. There was no oxygen in our atmosphere, very little, and these life forms, bacteria-like life forms, were anaerobic in their respiration, and then some of these bacteria developed photosynthetic reactions in which they evolved oxygen, and that oxygen accumulated so much that about 20% of the air is now oxygen. But that happened somewhere here after about 3 billion years. And most of the living plants and animals that you see have developed in this time point because of the oxygen that is developed here. And the human, as I said, is only about a million years old species. In the life of the earth, which is about 3.5 billion years. So imagine we are here in bhautik kshanik. આપણી પ્રેઝન્સ બહુ ક્ષણિક છે. કેટલી રહેશે તો જોઈએ આપણે, પણ અત્યાર સુધીમાં આપણે અહીંયા છીએ, આપણે ખાલી 1 મિલિયન વર્ષથી છીએ. પૃથ્વી અહીંયા 3. પૃથ્વી itself is 4.5 billion years old. So આપણે આપણી હાજરી અહીંયા બહુ ક્ષણિક છે, એનાથી આપણે વાકેફ રહેવું જોઈએ. એ વાકેફ રહેશો તો આપણા ઘણા બધા પ્રોબ્લેમ એની મેળે દૂર થઈ જશે. I will not elaborate. Sometime you can ask sociologists what I have meant by this. આ એક ઇન્ટરેસ્ટિંગ સવાલ છે. લાસ્ટ યર આ એક ઇશ્યુ ઊભો થયો હતો કે આપણે આ બધું બિગ બેંગ અને એમાં માનીએ તો કેન ફિઝિક્સ એક્સપ્લેન ઓલ ધીસ થિંગ્સ or we need a creator? And this issue is a very interesting issue, a philosophical issue. I will not discuss that here, but I will leave it open. But this well-known scientist, Stephen Hawking, says that the laws of physics can explain the way the Big Bang happened and the way this universe developed. It can also explain the way the universe is running. The physics is self-sufficient to explain all these things. So whether we need a creator for the creation is an open, debatable question, sometimes a sensitive question. So answer is not important, but I want young people to ponder about that if there is a creator, how the creator could have created a Big Bang and all of this universe that we see around. Next. But we are not going to do this. But as I have been saying, that are we alone is an interesting question, and very few questions are as central to our being as this one. So the search for alien life has captured human imaginations for thousands of years, and I will come to the last point subsequently. Next. So what we are discussing is how common is a life, and for that we examine how many planets are there which are like Earth. And like Earth means temperature wise, like Earth means that it has the right kind of elements in its composition, right kind of gases. How many such planets are there? As life evolved on Earth, it could have evolved there also. So how many such Earth-like planets are there? And the answer is that there are thousands of planets which can be Earth-like, ELPs. But no evidence of life present outside the Earth. So as of now, we have not detected a living form anywhere else in the world. But that doesn't mean there are a lot of likely places where life could have evolved. Now, whether the life is a common, that means it could be present at many places besides Earth, then it is a common, or if it is rare, that somehow the Earth is blessed in a particular way, that the life can be very rare and Earth is very special. We don't know this, but we'll examine whether there is a possibility of life elsewhere. Next. Now, what is on the Earth that affects our physiology, our life? And there are few things. Gravity. The Earth has certain gravitational force. If you go on Moon, there is no gravity. Actually, there is 1/6 of gravity present here, and that means that your body will not function well because it is developed under conditions where there is a certain gravitational force. So if you remove these things, your life has to adjust. So these are some peculiarities about Earth. Earth has a thick layer of air which protects us from radiations. Elsewhere there will be heavy radiations in the other planets. Whether that is detrimental to life? Earth has a certain temperature, and the temperature may not be the same elsewhere. Even if you see in solar system, if you go on one side nearer to the sun, it will be hot. If you go on away from sun, it will be freezing temperature. So air also creates certain pressure. So air pressure is also an important factor in development of human, the way it has evolved. And Earth has a certain magnetic field. Now whether that affects us, we don't know much, but magnetic field has certain influence. It helps us to navigate. See, most of the birds navigate using this Earth's magnetic system. So, and we have day and night and seasonal variations. Some of you might have traveled to USA, and they know that your system gets messed up because your system is used to certain day and night pattern, and when you go there, there will be a long day of almost 20 hours, and then your all this sleeping pattern, your appetite, and all of these things are perturbed. So these are the factors which have affected the development of life on the Earth, and if these factors are altered, next one, it is not possible that anywhere else all these factors will be very similar, but some of them may be different from Earth, and that is where the system will have to examine. So what do we mean by life? The life is in disequilibrium with environment. What does it mean is that environment and earthna, the soil ma je composition che, our body's composition is very different. So that is a disequilibrium with the environment. The life replicates itself. Whether it's a bacteria or insects, they can replicate themselves. Non-living things cannot do that. It undergoes evolution. Then one species can evolve into another one, as we are told that we evolved from chimpanzee. So likewise, the life evolves, and life uses two reactions, photosynthetic reactions, to trap the energy from surrounding, and respiration to utilize that energy for our being. So our physiology is actually utilizing the energy which is released from the respiratory process. So these are some of the attributes of life. The next one. And one key question is that how could a first life could have developed from the non-living molecules? And there are many theories, no definite answers, but these are some of the requirements, that the molecule has to be self-replicating, and there are molecules like RNA which can self-replicate. It has to have a catalytic process to release energy. There are some molecules which can do that, proteins and RNAs can do that. Energy requirement, water as a medium and some kind of a boundary containment is required for first living cells to generate out of non-living molecules. The next one. This is a famous historical experiments where the gases which were present in early Earth were trapped in a container, and then the electrical sparks were provided, and under that conditions they examine what kind of molecules will be developed. So as you can see, the methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, hydrogen, nitrogen, water, if you mix them and provide them electrical sparks, you can develop amino acids, nitrogenous bases, which are the molecules used for development of life. So these molecules can be generated from non-living molecules and gases under the conditions which prevailed in the early Earth period. This was in 1953 a famous experiment, University of Chicago. The next one. And another attributes of living system, you see, our surroundings, the earth crust has a lot of these molecules in this blue bar. For example, oxygen and calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and important thing is silicon. There are a lot of these elements in our surroundings, but living system has developed a methodology to accumulate only hydrogen, which is not much in the atmosphere, carbon and oxygen. So we are selectively a carbon-based life. And I'm emphasizing this because when you examine the life elsewhere, it need not be carbon-based. It could also have used some other elements to develop life elsewhere. And these are the things we have kept out, but life elsewhere could have used them also. Particular candidate is silicon. That life in other planets with very hot temperature could have silicon as an element rather than carbon. And silicon compounds are very similar to carbon compounds. It has 4 bonds. It is just below in periodic table below carbon, and the bonds are more stable, and it can behave like a carbon compound on the Earth. So there is one possibility that silicon-based life could have developed elsewhere. The next one. So we have to see that elsewhere we may not have these conditions, but still is it possible to develop a life there. Next one. Now, the next. Now you have to calculate the probability, and you can calculate the probability of finding an intelligent life if you factor in many factors. In the morning we had a workshop on statistical probability. This is an example that the number of communicative civilization you can figure out if you know the rate of star formation multiplied by fraction of the stars with planetary system, because some stars are like sun, they may not have planets. So fraction of those stars which have planets, the fraction of the planets with stars which have a ecosystem, and the planets where life can develop, a fraction of planets where life can develop, fraction of living species that develop intelligence. There may be life elsewhere, but may not be as intelligent as life on the Earth. So there is a fraction. And likewise, so if you multiply all of these things, you can probably think whether the life is expected elsewhere or not. The problem is, how do we get these fractions? That depends upon whether you are optimist or a pessimist. And if you are optimist, you can get your numbers that, okay, thousands of planets in the universe could have life. And if you are pessimist, you may say the chances are 1 in billion. So it depends on that one. But remember, we are looking for an intelligent life which can communicate. Life may be there, but they may not have evolved to this extent. Or even if they evolved, they could have become extinct by this time, and they may not be there. It could have been there in the past, but may not be there now. These are some of the years when we went in the space. Drosophila, which is a fruit fly, went much before us in the space, and a rhesus monkey and a dog, 51. Men went in 61 and women in 63, 1963, and the other animals followed. So next one. So I was telling you that if you are a pessimist, you can think that the probability of that happening is so low that ultimately the chances of finding an intelligent life is 2 into 10 raised to minus 5. But if you are optimist, you can say